I'm going to show you why this guy's swing is not that crazy, and you can compare him to this guy, and what you can take from their swings and put into your own game. Hi guys, so we have Matt Wolff here. I'm pretty sure this footage doesn't show his funky little kick out inwards with his knee, but I'll put a line down his club so we can track where that is at impact. Fairly standard setup, maybe hands are closer to his body than some, bit lent over compared to some, but if you look here, at this line on his club, you can see it facing down to the floor. It's further out than you'd usually expect, obviously, and same again. It looks really odd, but the main thing that he's doing that's a little bit different is just not rotating that right wrist. That's the only real difference I see when he swings. You can see his wrist not rotating and his elbow not tucking into his side as much. So it isn't that crazy. See how his forearm is like that. Someone else's would be tucked in like that red line. So I don't see too much crazy. If we take it back again to the halfway point that I used to, arms horizontal that I usually use, put a red line over it. Now it looks funky. I mean, usually if we had a vertical line, you would not expect something to the right of it on this. It's normally to the left, similar to a downswing plane. But if we circle the hands, we'll be able to track back through them in a minute, and you can see where he gets to. So as he comes back, now he starts to complete the backswing. And as he starts completing the backswing, if you look down at his left heel, what is happening, I'll put something on there. What he is doing is he's flattening the club, but he isn't twisting his hands. He's not doing anything. If you just look at the heel, as the heel stamps back down, because he clearly raises it, that is how he flattens the club. So he's flattened his heel, turned into a squat. He's not really moving his arms. What he's doing is rotating his shoulders. He's rotating his hips. Arms are kind of coming along for the ride. And that has shallowed his club. Simple as that. Shallowing again. He's not hitting it with his arms. So fairly traditional again. Because in a way, if on that backswing, wherever you take it to, you're going to rotate it down into a flatter plane anyway, if you rotate and use that kind of lower leg initiation type movement. So there you go. Lovely swing he's completed there. I'm a big fan. I love the left heel lift as well. I mean, I'm put that in my own game, as you know. Take all these lines off. Let him complete it. I am going to put a box around his head. Not anything too crazy, because I just want to see how his body rotation stops his head movement being too crazy. So you see there again, not rotating the hands, flattening the club, dips and then rises up through the ball, and I think that's where he gets his masses of power, if I'm honest. And yeah, very powerful young man, and for me, a lovely swing. Here is one of my favourite golfers I've ever watched. I love watching him. I love taking one club out, doing all the things he does. As you'll notice, he's a bit more upright, a bit more space between his groin and his club. He is using a longer iron, so that could be what this is. But when I said I wanted to... I'd noticed similarities, and I was learning from Bubba Watson. I just got laughed at. And I don't really see how, because he is a Masters, 2-time Masters winner. So we'll put a club line on his club. so we can track again how it comes down. And here, not exactly the same, but you see there is very minimal hand rotation. He's keeping that club to the floor, so he's getting, just like Matt Wolff, he's getting serious extension, serious width in the swing. Look at that width. Same as Matt Wolff. And the club is facing down pretty much to the floor, hardly any rotation. What will start to happen now is the elbow starts tucking. Maybe a bit earlier than Matt Wolff's, to be fair, but if you see there, he's definitely the other side of a vertical line. So very similar. We'll put the hands on, same as we usually do. And let's kind of, where he's got slightly flatter arm swing movement, actually, I'd say. But now, when he gets up to here, he completes his backswing in a slightly different way. So he completes his wrist cock during the backswing. So he just continues it a bit further. But you can see his heel well off the floor. So much knee and lower hip movement. But if you watch his right heel, I always got to say left, and that flying elbow I had in my game, and that's why I copied him. But if you see how far his heel is off the floor, it's massively off the floor. So if we track it now, again, nothing else is moving. He is rotating everything, starting from the hips. The heel stamp has pretty much initiated everything. Let's put a downswing line on. And as you can see, flattened the club, majorly flattened this club. And I remember just when I was having issues with my swing, thinking, how does Bubba do it? Because I'd noticed these similarities, and I went looking for people with raising their left heel and right heel for him. So I had this I went through and had a look, and I kind of realised that he was doing it with his hips. So he was starting the squatting down into it, leaving the club where it was almost, and just rotating it around its flat and in the club on its own. And I realised that if I was to bring it out further and not rotate them forearms, it would allow me at the top, when I haven't rotated too much, to do the swiveling and not end up too flat, because I didn't want to get stuck inside, but to come down on a really nice plane. So let's see it again. His hip movement, his foot movement, foot coming off the floor, I think allows for no crazy head movement. There's a little dip, but that's kind of standard great ball striking dip in my eyes. So if I want to show you how he gets his power as well, another form of power, not just rotation. If we draw a line across above his head now, so he's dipped a lot, you could see. Now let's start the downswing, and he starts to dip, but watch him come up through that ball with full power. That's using the ground to just force off and hit this ball 300 plus yards every time. So that's one of my favourite players ever. Let's go to my other favourite player ever. Yeah, look at that. No, seriously, in all seriousness, this is me. And I'm going to show you kind of what I've put into my swing from these two great golfers. So I'll put a line on my club. And now if I can manage to put a line on the club properly. Right, so let me pull it back. And as you can see, same again. Not to their degree, because I think maybe I let my elbow give way a little earlier, but it isn't rotating a crazy amount, as you can see. But my elbow is tucking into my side a bit more than them, but less than usual. But you can see the masses of width that I've managed to get here. So again, club face is still not rotated, open, so I love that. But my elbow is tucking in much more than theirs, let's face it, we can see that. Now let's put a line on. So you can see, I mean, mine is seriously upright, but it's just the normal side of a vertical line. See that? Right there. Just the normal side. But not much. So it's very upright. And I love it. But what was happening before is this was more like my downswing. It was this upright. So I was having trouble coming a little bit flatter than this. Probably hands not far off the same, but hands were flatter. So I was rotating that forearm earlier. Here you can see my heels come off the floor, but not to their degree. I don't think I need to push it any further like theirs, because for me this is a lot. And my flying elbow, it looks longer, but the angle of my swing is about parallel on this when I normally film it from face on. So I don't know why it looks so long. But now you can see me tucking my elbow in, and I'm rotating with a stamped left heel. And it's that left heel that is literally pulling me. We'll go a little shorter because my hands didn't marry up as much on this one. But bring it down. And again, I say it every time, the rotation that I learnt from these two greats, well, one great and one future great in my opinion, but I learnt it from these two, that I could shallow the club without not making a crazy looping motion that I always assumed with people like Sergio Garcia, who I've actually looked at, and that I'll come to another day. But here you can see I've exited left. Matt Wolff did a similar thing, which is good, and I'm really happy with that. I mean, them two planes, that's what I'm trying to get to. If I'm honest, my red 9 is normally a little flatter than that. I'm trying to work on it. But you can see everything about that. I've rotated out. The transition that I've worked on is just squatting, pushing the left heel down, squatting in, leaving the arms behind, coming for a ride with the shoulders, and it shallowed the club on its own. I'm not having to try and manipulate it. So what it has eradicated is these massive, massive pushes that I used to make when I wasn't warm. Let's put a box around my head, see my head movement. So if I come back, I'll slow it down and then we'll come back. Right. Not a crazy amount of dip. I'm very happy with how much I don't dip early on. Still very still. And that's the left heel raising off the floor. Oh, and you can see also actually, let's put these on, like a normal elbow might be pulling up a little bit earlier. My elbow, horizontal, I'm quite happy with that. But we get into there. And then I've got the dip, but I do push up through, but I would think maybe a bit more squat, as you could see off that, a bit more as we're coming down. I just showed you the Bubba Watson. So if we just look Bubba Watson wise, I drew a line on Bubba's head, and he dipped down. I've got a dip, but not enough. So I come up a little earlier. So I am feeling like my next move to get this fully in would be to stamp that left heel into a bit more of a squat, like the old Sam Snead squat, and then come up through for a bit more power. And what I think that'll free me up to do is not go over the top hitting the ball, you know? So in the interest of not being right-hand bias, I've actually flipped Matt Wolff round here. You can see their two stances. They differ a little, but it's probably the club and also a little bit of personal preference. Little close, like he hangs his arms down a bit more, but I tend to teach that Matt Wolff kind of move because I think it makes them be able to rotate and dip that their left shoulder down to the floor more. So here you can see both the other side are parallel, vertical, sorry, which is very, very rare. One more than the other, but if anything, Bubba's not rotating his hands even more, but it's just the actual movement of Matt Wolff's elbow. But still fairly standard other than that rotation on the forearm. But you can see they're getting loads of hip movement. But as they come down, look at that squat, and I think you will notice from that, as opposed to mine, I do not dip the amount that these two do with the squat that they've built into. So I am looking at adding that in a little, just so I can improve my game even more. But I love that Matt Wolff's is right on plane. So maybe that over the top movement, like going a little bit more crazily outside, is helping them to drop it back in on plane rather than flat. But they've both got similar impact positions, yellow line just above their green line. So this is why I'm teaching my daughter right now to flatten her club out a little at a dress, because it is going to come more upright through impact. So, you know, what you can put into your game though is getting that full on width, trying to maybe not rotate the forearms too early anyway, and really working on that transition. Maybe not a squat, but more of a leading with that left foot. But you can take from these two how much they rotate. That is the biggest thing that I can see from these. It's so rotational. And I haven't done it face on for this review, but they do stay very centered. So I hope you enjoyed this video. See you soon.